It's my pleasure to be here with you this evening. I convey my best wishes for Ugadi, Tamil New Year and for Vishu. And for the occasion we are all celebrating, which is the 200th birth anniversary of Maharaja Swathi Thirunal. There is so much about various people that we can look up on the internet, when he was born, when he died, stuff like that. So I'll give you some personal observations, Maharaja through my eyes. I started giving concerts in 1990 and I looked much younger than I did at that time. So I was around 20-25 years old and I looked around 14. Even then I used to attend lecture demonstrations in Madras during the music season and attend concerts in the evening. Most of the time I found that I profited more by attending lecture demonstrations than concerts, and I would wish that musicians would speak a little and give us some insights into the composition or background of the composers, which rarely happened. And when I started giving concerts, right from my first concert I started speaking. And because I looked so young, people who were much older than me, they would come and tell me, hey, you shut up and sing, don't speak. Because we have heard Ariyakudi, Maharaja Swathi, Mushiri, Chennai and all those people. Who are you to come and teach me? Like that. So in those days I was much more brash and outspoken than now. So I would tell them, well, I have seen the film Enter the Dragon starring Bruce Lee 25 times, but that doesn't mean that I know karate. So you might have heard all those people, but that doesn't mean that you know the meaning of Endaro Mahanubavu. So I used to talk back like that. So now, since I am much older and I look even more old, I'm very happy that the organizers, when they invited me, they specifically asked me to speak a little. And then I said, when I sing a concert itself, I will speak. Then they said, no, we have to speak separately first and then continue speaking during the concert also. So that is why I'm here now, and I'm actually waiting to share the stage with three of my favorite musicians who are in the audience. Maharaja Swathi Thirunal lived at the same time during Sri Tyagaraja, Sri Dikshitar and Sri Shyama Shastri. They are commonly called as the Trinity, but apart from being very, very brilliant and having lived at the same time, there is not much in common with, say, Dikshitar and Shyama Shastri. They're so totally different in the way they lived, in the way they composed, in their approach to God, in their approach to the lyrics, music, everything. Maharaja was also at the same time, and he had a fourth track of his own. Among those musicians, the set of that musicians, Sri Tyagaraja is the most popular because of various reasons. Apart from the musical merit, which is unquestionable, the main reason where Tyagaraja scores over most of the others was he had a very, very rich legacy of Shishyas. It's a very rich Shishya Parampara. They carried forward his compositions all through South India. I am a Malayali who studied music from two Kerala Brahmins first, then now from a gentleman from Andhra Pradesh. But if I look at my gurus and their gurus and their gurus, all four of my gurus, the ultimate guru leads back to Sri Tyagaraja. So that is the reach of his legacy all over South India, whether we are from Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu. Even with those composers like Tyagaraja, where a living, authentic Shishya Parampara exists, there are debates as to which is the original tune, which is the authentic tune. The same song is sung in two different ways. And each Shishya Parampara, they claim that this is the original way. But unfortunately, we don't have audio recordings of any of these people. With Dikshitar now, there is one whole group with Sampradaya Pradarsini. They say that most of the songs we sing are all wrong. this is not how they should be sung. So this is the case with composers who had a Shishya Parampara, while Maharaja Swathi Thirunal fared even worse because firstly he was a ruling king and secondly he lived only for 33 very short years. And during those years, much of his time was invested in not only administrative problems which a normal king would have, but he was a king who ruled during the British rule. So he had domestic problems as well as facing the British, which was a very, very tough time for anybody to be alive. So within this short time, he did a lot of miracles, not only in music, but in administration, in poetry, in astrology, in astronomy, and in social reforms also. But we know him mainly for his musical contributions. Sri Purandradasa, Annamacharya, Bhadrachala Ramadas, Sadasiva Brahmendra, Jayadeva, there are many composers like that where we know that the original music has been lost. Sri Tyagaraja, we presume that the compositions are more or less how we sing them now, while Sri Swathi Thirunal falls in a grey area in the middle where we can't say that his music was lost completely and just take the lyrics, and we can't say yes, these are the authentic tunes either, because some songs like the Padavarnams, the Chittaswarams can't be changed, and when we look at the Sahityam for the Chittaswarams in Swathi Thirunal's Padavarnams, we find a very supreme level of musicianship full of Swaraksharams. So whenever I think of Swathi Thirunal, I see the Sahityam of his Padavarnams as a classic base for how his musical thinking would have been. Unlike many other composers, he made his mark in Jatiswarams, Swarajatis, Kirtanams, Padams, Javali, Tillana, Bhajan, Ragamalika, and many sets of compositions like the 9 Navaratri Kritis, the Navavidha Bhakti, the 9 ways of devotion, Sravanam, Kirtanam, and all that to Atma Nivedana. He wrote a lot of prose also, like Bhakti Manjari, Padmanabha Shatakam, and so on. He wrote 2 musical operas describing the life of Ajamila and Kuchela, Kuchelopakhyanam and Ajamilopakhyanam. He wrote compositions for the 9 days, the 10 days of the Utsavam at the Padmanabha Swami temple. All this within a very short life of 33 years. We have this tradition in Malayalam. There is a saying, I presume it must be there in other languages also. Karkakyam tan punya pon punya, we say. So even for a crow, his own child is a golden child, like that. And we find many pushy parents who will push their presumably talented children saying, my son is the best, daughter is the best, like that. So as a kid, I always used to hear about Swathi Thirunal from my family and feel that these people were speaking highly about him only because he was our ancestor. So I didn't pay much attention to Swathi Thirunal or his genius or anything because he was from my family. Suppose he was an outside person, I would probably have paid more attention. It is after I joined my current guru, Dr. Mangalapalli Balamuralikrishna sir, and started intimately interacting with a creator, with a composer, with a Vagayakara, that I started delving more deeply into the compositions and the compositional mind of other composers also. Not only Swathi Thirunal, like Annamacharya, Purandradasa, Bhadrachala Ramadas, Tyagaraja. And then I started realizing more and more how unique Maharaja's position is in the firmament of not only Carnatic music, but in the firmament of Indian classical music itself. Because we find in every area there is division more than people coming together. In tennis, my violinist Varadarajan and me, we love Rafael Nadal, while Sri Harikumar, he loves Roger Federer. So if somebody says, I like Roger Federer, it's presumed that they hate Nadal, and vice versa. In old Hindi film songs, which I listen to a lot, there is this big feud going on between the fans of Mohammad Rafi and Kishore Kumar. Mohammad Rafi died in 1981, Kishore Kumar died in 1987. Even now, if you just Google them on the internet, you will find Rafi fans trashing Kishore Kumar and Kishore Kumar fans trashing Rafi, though they were very good friends. So there is division in everything. And same with Indian classical music also. There are very few countries like China or Iran, or of course the European countries like Austria, Germany, which can boast of a living, dynamic, evolving classical tradition of music. I don't want this to be a dry talk, that's why I'm drinking a little water. In India, we are doubly blessed because we have not just one but two distinct living systems of classical music, the Hindustani tradition from the north and the Carnatic tradition from the south. There are very few Carnatic musicians who are receptive to and who are interested in Hindustani music, and even fewer Hindustani musicians who are interested in Carnatic music. Some percussionists, they come together and they have a happy time doing live vinyas and all that. When that is the situation in 21st century, when we have internet and Google and we can listen to any kind of music in the world, of course, the disadvantage is that we have mobile phones also visiting here. Okay. So, but 200 years ago, not only Swathi Thirunal, Muthuswami Dikshit, I feel he is one of the top persons, if not the top. He physically went all around India and was so interested in Hindustani music that he absorbed so much of Hindustani music from places like Kashi, but composed only Carnatic compositions in Hindustani style, like in Jai Jayanti, Hamid Kalyani, Shubhabanturali and all that. While Maharaja Swathi Thirunal, because he was stuck in Travancore physically, because he was a king, he was so thirsty for knowledge about Hindustani classical music that he invited, that was a privilege of being a Maharaja that he could invite outside musicians to Travancore. He invited them and taught himself, educated himself in Hindustani music to such an extent that he composed more than 30 bandishes in the Hindustani style in Hindi and Braja Bhasha. I will give you. I forgot to keep my notes. Even a song which all of you know, like Vishweshwara Darsana Kar. So just keep in mind that a Malayali man, well, another big Malayali man was Adi Shankara. So Adi Shankara, what he has done, that is another, in fact, Khattam Karthik, who is a Sanskrit scholar, he will know much more about Adi Shankara. But the fact that they lived such short lives, and from the southern tip of India, how much they have gathered and left behind also, it's quite a miracle. So this man who lived in Travancore, he is telling his mind to go to Kashi and have darshan, and he is visualizing Kashi without physically having gone there. So it says, Vishweshwara darshan kar chal man tum Kashi. Then he says, Vishweshwara darshan jab kinho bahu prem sahit Kate Karuna Nidhana Janana Marana Fasi. If you have darshan, then you are saved from the cycle of birth and death, and you are liberated. Then he is describing Kashi. Behati Jinki Puri Me Ganga Paya Ke Samana, in whose city the Ganga flows like milk. Vake Tat Khat Khat Bhar Rahe Sannyasi. So in each, the ghats, which are very famous in Banaras, it's full of sannyasis who are going there. Bhasma Ang Bhuj Trishul. Shiva, his body is covered with the sacred ash, Bhasma, and he has Trishul, a trident in his hand. Bhasma Ang Bhuj Trishul Urume Lase Nagamala. On his body, it's decorated with garland of serpents. Girija Artha Ang Dhare Tribhuvana Jinadasi. So these are the other charanams of Vishweshwara Darshan. Then of course his signature Padmanabha Kamala Nayana, Trinayana Shambho Mahesha. Bhajile in do Swarup Rahiye Avinasi. They become immortal. to pray to both these people and remain immortal. This is Vishweshwara, composed by a person from southern India 200 years ago. His compositions kind of languished after his time because there's a lot of political upheaval, and again, like I said about Federer and Nadal or Kishore and Rafi, in my family also, there are so many Maharajas who the current Maharaja and the next Maharaja would be like India and Pakistan. So even Raja Ravi Varma had that terrible fate, because when Raja Ravi Varma was a teenager, the current Maharaja was very, very encouraging of him, Swathi Thirunal Maharaja. And unfortunately for Ravi Varma, the Maharaja passed away when he was only 16 or 17 years old. And the next Maharaja was his younger brother, and whoever the older brother was nice to, the younger brother cut off. And whoever the older brother put in prison, the younger brother immediately liberated him. So because of those things, even in our governments we can see that one government will start a big project. It might be a very good thing, but the next government comes, they just destroy that. So the only reason because it is this government that started. So because of that, it's the country, it's the public, we are all losing out very big time. Same thing has happened in royal families also. So after Maharaja's time, many of his compositions were languishing in darkness. When my great-grandmother, who was the mother of the last Maharaja of Travancore, Maharani Setu Parvati Bai, she came into the scene during the first part of the 20th century. And she also had no idea about the greatness of the extent of Swathi Thirunal's worth. But then slowly she was very interested not only in music but in knowledge in general. Suppose she found, I remember this because I experienced that myself, when video games started coming in 1980s. It was a new phenomenon for us. So we would be playing this video game and this lady was still alive. And she would come and talk to us and find out how it worked. And when she passed away, those days there was a magazine called the Illustrated Weekly of India. So every issue would have one half page, which was a comic strip of Dennis the Menace. And when Amma Maharani Setu Parvati died, after she died, we found around 10 years of Dennis the Menace cut out and stored, till almost the last issue when she was alive. That was the range of her interest. It was not only Yadugula Kamburi and Dhanyashi, but in science, in architecture, in cuisine, languages, everything. She had a very, very thirsty mind for knowledge. So she started discovering that Maharaja's compositions were there. We had an ancestor who composed. And she became more and more curious about this and started collecting his compositions which were sung in other royal families like Tiruvalla, Haripad, Kilimanur and other places. Then there were the Mullamudu Bhagavatars who sang at the Navratra Mandapam every day. They also had a few compositions. The Nadaswara Vidwans of Padmanabha Swami temple, they had a few compositions. Then she invited Dr. Harikesanallur Muttaya Bhagavatar to Travancore to help. So he physically went around place to place and collected Maharaja's compositions. Much later, to assist him, Dr. Shamaguda Srinivasa Iyer came. Along with him, my guru, Professor K.S. Narayana Swami, Mushiri Subramanian, a lot of people have contributed a lot to collecting Maharaja's compositions. But the sad thing is that none of them left behind a record which was the original tune, which was an original tune which was modified a little bit, and which were songs where only lyrics were available and they were tuned freshly. So we have this whole bunch of compositions which contain some authentic tunes, some modified tunes, and some tunes put by 20th century musicians.